This looks like a deliberate attempt to deceive. And when you combine that really very shocking edit, as you say, of two different clips that were an hour apart, taken completely out of context, and you combine that, as Panorama did, with sort of slightly edgy music, when you mix it with a whole, in the context of a program that's trying to basically make Donald Trump out to be something of a monster.
Capitol Hill is absolutely exploding right now because lawmakers aren't just criticizing Trump anymore. They're openly demanding he resign, end his presidency, walk away. And this isn't coming from fringe voices or progressive activists alone. Multiple formal actions are happening simultaneously. Representatives filing impeachment articles with specific constitutional charges, floor votes forcing Republicans to go on record about whether Trump should remain in office, Trump himself admitting to his own party that if they lose control of Congress, he will be impeached. Not might be, will be. That sitting president acknowledging removal threat is real enough that his survival depends entirely on election outcomes. Meanwhile, he's refusing to consider resignation despite mounting pressure, despite formal documents calling him unfit to govern, despite votes showing significant block of lawmakers ready to remove him. This is constitutional crisis playing out in real time, where removal mechanisms exist, but partisan protection prevents their use. And what's happening on Capitol Hill reveals everything about how broken accountability has become. But real quick, before we get into this, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Patrick Smith Show to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, please subscribe, because you might think you are but aren't. Your subscription actually matters here. All right, so let's start with what's actually been filed in Congress, because this isn't abstract political theater. These are formal constitutional documents with detailed charges. House Resolution 353 is the most comprehensive. 7 full articles of impeachment, not vague complaints. Specific constitutional violations with evidence and legal reasoning. This is blueprint for removing Trump from office if political will existed to use it. Share this video with everyone you know, because Article 1 accuses Trump of obstruction of justice and violating due process, pattern of interfering with investigations, defying oversight, attacking judicial proceedings, his treatment of Justice Department, his demands that judges be impeached, his responses to investigations against him, all framed as systematic obstruction rather than legitimate defense. Saying Trump doesn't just defend himself legally, he actively obstructs accountability mechanisms. Article 2 charges usurping Congress's appropriations power. This is huge constitutionally. Power of purse belongs to Congress. They decide how government money gets spent. They pass budgets allocating funds for specific purposes. President's supposed to execute those decisions, spend money how Congress authorized. But Article charges Trump has repeatedly violated this. Spent money Congress didn't authorize. Withheld funds Congress did appropriate. Moved money around without permission. Declared bogus emergencies to access funds Congress never intended for those purposes. Think about what that means. When president can just ignore congressional spending decisions. When he can move money however he wants, Congress loses fundamental power. One of their most important constitutional authorities gets stolen by executive. That's exactly kind of tyranny founders feared when they created separation of powers. That's why this article exists. Make sure you're subscribed to Patrick Smith Show, because Article 3 is abuse of trade powers and international aggression. This directly addresses Venezuela operation and similar actions. Unauthorized military operations. Claims of authority over foreign countries. Use of executive power in international affairs that exceeds constitutional limits. Trump launching military strikes without congressional approval. Capturing foreign leaders. Claiming U.S. will govern other nations. All without authorization required by Constitution. Article 4 charges violation of First Amendment rights. Attacks on press freedom. Retaliation against critics. Use of government power to suppress speech. Trump's pattern of threatening media outlets. Attacking journalists. Treating criticism as enemy activity. All framed as official suppression of protected expression. Not president defending himself. President using government power to punish speech he doesn't like. Article 5 addresses creation of unlawful office. This connects to Department of Government efficiency and questions about whether it was established through proper legal channels. If DOJ lacks statutory authorization but exercises government power, its existence raises constitutional concerns. Can President just create government departments without Congress? Can he give them power over federal agencies without legal authority? Article says no, says that's unconstitutional. Article 6 is bribery and corruption, connections between official actions and personal benefit, using presidential power in ways that financially advantage Trump or associates, conflicts of interest, emoluments concerns, broader question of whether Trump has used presidency for self-enrichment rather than public service, pattern of putting personal gain above national interest. And Article 7 is the one that's absolutely devastating. Tyranny, that's actual word used. Summary accusation encompassing overall pattern. Article argues that combination of conduct across other articles constitutes tyrannical exercise of power. Invokes founding-era concerns about executive abuse. Positions Trump's conduct as exactly what constitutional structure was designed to prevent. When formal impeachment resolution uses word tyranny, that's saying this president is threat to democratic system itself, and resolution's conclusions about Trump's fitness are brutal, states explicitly that he is unfit to govern, not that his policies are bad, that he personally is unfit, that he has acted in manner incompatible with self-governance and rule of law, that he will remain threat to Constitution if allowed to remain in office. Those aren't hedged criticisms. Those are formal constitutional determinations calling for immediate removal. Representative Shri Thanadar filed this as privileged resolution. That procedural designation matters enormously. Normally, House leadership controls what reaches floor. They can bury resolutions in committee, prevent votes from happening, but privileged resolutions create pathway around that control. Force leadership to confront impeachment rather than ignoring it. Thanadar's filing signals intent to force votes regardless of leadership preferences, and there's proof that significant support exists. December vote on separate impeachment articles from Representative Al Green. Green used privileged motion to force vote on his articles. Republicans moved to table resolution. Kill it procedurally. Motion to table passed. But 140 members voted against tabling. They wanted impeachment to proceed. That's more than a third of House membership willing to advance removal despite Republican opposition. Think about significance of that. In polarized environment where party loyalty dominates everything, 140 members broke ranks on procedural motion, voted to advance impeachment consideration over their party's objection. That's not symbolic gesture. That's genuine commitment to removal. That's baseline support that exists right now. Under Democratic majority, that number would grow as political calculations changed. And this connects to Trump's own statements. At January 6th House Republican retreat, Trump told his party explicitly that if they don't win midterms, he will be impeached. Not might face impeachment, will be impeached. He's acknowledging that Democrats have constitutional grounds ready, that only Republican control of Congress prevents them from acting, that his survival depends entirely on election outcomes. Language he used is revealing. Said Democrats will surely find reason to impeach. That's not claiming charges would be baseless. That's acknowledging multiple grounds for impeachment exist, that Democrats have arguments available and would deploy them effectively. His defense isn't that he's innocent. His defense is that Republicans need to win to protect him politically. Share this video because that's sitting president admitting he needs partisan shield to survive. Admitting that on merits, Democrats have case for removal. Admitting that only political protection prevents accountability. When Trump himself validates threat as real, when he frames election as determining his impeachment, that confirms what formal documents demonstrate. Removal pressure isn't theoretical, it's documented in congressional resolutions and acknowledged by Trump himself. But Trump's response to all this pressure is complete defiance. He's not considering resignation, not modifying behavior, not trying to address charges. He's betting entirely on electoral protection, refusing to acknowledge any legitimacy in accusations, doubling down on contested actions, fighting every attempt to constrain his power or end his presidency. This creates loaded gun dynamic. Written impeachment articles exist. Constitutional findings about unfitness are documented. Voting bloc demonstrated willingness to act. Trump acknowledged threat is real. What's missing is majority power to pull trigger. And 2026 elections will determine whether that power materializes. If Republicans hold House, Trump stays protected. If Democrats win, these existing documents become starting point for actual proceedings. Now let me break down why this matters beyond just Trump, because we're witnessing fundamental breakdown of constitutional accountability. Founders created impeachment as check on presidential power. If president abuses office, commits high crimes, violates Constitution, Congress can remove him. House votes to impeach. Senate holds trial. If 2/3 of Senate convicts, president is removed immediately. That power exists in Constitution. It's not theoretical. It's been used before. Trump himself was impeached twice in first term. But it requires political will, requires enough members willing to vote for removal. And right now, that will doesn't exist among Republicans. They won't turn on their president regardless of evidence. Why? Because they're more afraid of Trump's base than they are of enabling abuse. Because voting to remove Trump means primary challengers, means angry constituents, means losing re-election. So they calculate that protecting Trump even when he deserves removal is politically safer than doing constitutional duty. Think about what that means. That's broken impeachment as effective check, turned it from constitutional mechanism into partisan calculation. Question isn't, did president commit impeachable offenses anymore? Question is, does his party control enough votes to shield him? And if answer is yes, he survives no matter what he did. Trump figured this out years ago. He knows impeachment is meaningless as long as Republicans protect him. So he pushes boundaries constantly, takes actions that clearly exceed presidential authority, violates constitutional limits, and knows Congress won't stop him. They might file resolutions, make speeches, hold hearings, but when vote happens, Republicans fall in line. Vote to protect him. Second accountability mechanism is resignation under pressure. President can be pressured to step down when political situation becomes untenable. That's what happened with Nixon. Watergate investigation gathered evidence. Impeachment became inevitable. Even Republicans told Nixon he had to go. He resigned before Congress could remove him, because pressure was overwhelming, because staying was impossible. But Trump doesn't work like Nixon. Trump doesn't respond to pressure, doesn't care about norms or traditions, doesn't accept that there are lines he shouldn't cross. He's faced investigations for years, been impeached twice, had countless scandals, and never once considered resigning, never thought about stepping down. Why? Because Trump's base stays loyal no matter what. They don't see scandals and demand accountability. They see persecution, witch hunts, deep state conspiracies, so they rally around him harder when he's attacked. That gives Trump no incentive to resign, no political pressure strong enough to force him out. And Congress knows this, knows that calling for resignation is pointless. Trump will just ignore it, dismiss it as partisan attack, keep fighting. So even lawmakers who privately think Trump should resign don't waste time with public demands they know won't work. Third mechanism is 25th Amendment, allows Vice President and Cabinet majority to declare President unable to discharge duties. If they do that, VP becomes acting President. But President can challenge declaration. Then Congress decides, need 2/3 of both chambers to uphold removal. That's even higher bar than impeachment. Share this with everyone because it requires VP and Cabinet turning on President, declaring him unfit to serve. That's absolutely not happening with Trump. JD Vance isn't going to invoke 25th Amendment against guy who made him vice president. Cabinet is full of loyalists Trump personally selected, people who owe their positions to him. They're not going to betray him by declaring him incompetent. So 25th Amendment is completely off table, which means all three constitutional mechanisms for removal, impeachment, resignation pressure, and 25th Amendment, none are working. None have political support necessary to actually remove Trump. So he serves out term regardless of what he does, regardless of how serious accusations are, regardless of how strong evidence is. That's what creates this crisis on Capitol Hill. Because you have lawmakers who genuinely believe Trump is unfit, who think he's violated Constitution, who believe he should be removed. They're filing formal impeachment articles, making speeches on floor, voting to advance removal proceedings, doing everything within their power, but they're minority. They can document abuses, can present evidence, can make constitutional arguments, but can't force action without majority, can't remove president without enough votes. And Republicans who control those votes refuse to use them, refuse to hold Trump accountable, choose party loyalty over constitutional duty. So Capitol Hill erupts with demands for resignation, with impeachment resolutions, with floor votes forcing members to go on record, all creating pressure without producing result, all documenting abuses without stopping them, creating this gap between what should happen constitutionally and what actually happens politically. Now let me talk about what this means for voters. Because 2026 elections have become explicit referendum on Trump's removal. Trump himself framed it this way, told Republicans they must win to protect him, admitted that losing means impeachment, made it clear that election determines his fate. Democrats have formal articles ready, H.R. 353 with 7 detailed charges, procedural pathways to force votes, demonstrated support from 140 members, constitutional arguments fully developed. If they win House majority, they can activate removal machinery immediately, can advance impeachment articles, can hold hearings, can present evidence, can vote to impeach. Whether Senate would convict is different question. Need 2/3 majority there. That's 67 senators. Even if all Democrats voted yes, would need 17 Republicans. That's unlikely unless Trump does something so catastrophic that even supporters abandon him. But House impeachment alone would be devastating politically, would dominate news for months, would force Republicans to defend Trump on record. Think about what that means. So, elections aren't just about policy anymore. They're about whether constitutional accountability functions, whether president can abuse power and face consequences, whether impeachment mechanisms get activated or remain dormant. Every House seat matters because margin determines whether removal proceedings begin. Trump's betting everything on Republican victory. He's not trying to govern more carefully, not trying to reduce impeachment grounds. He's going all in on electoral protection, believing that as long as Republicans control Congress, he's untouchable, that he can do whatever he wants because votes won't be there to stop him. That's dangerous precedent for democracy because it teaches future presidents that accountability is purely political, that if you keep your party loyal, if you keep your base energized, you can survive anything, can violate Constitution, can abuse power, can commit acts that clearly warrant removal, and stay in office as long as your party shields you. It also shows voters that their power is limited, that even when president commits impeachable offenses, even when formal charges are filed, even when evidence is clear, removal depends on partisan calculations, not constitutional principles, that elections matter more than accountability mechanisms, that democracy's check on executive power is ballot box, not impeachment. Now let me address the specific charges in more detail, because Article 1 about obstruction isn't abstract. It points to specific instances where Trump interfered with investigations. When he demanded agencies stop investigating him, when he fired officials who wouldn't protect him, when he defied subpoenas and blocked testimony, pattern showing systematic effort to prevent oversight. Article 2 about appropriations connects to real financial decisions. When Trump declared emergency to access military construction funds for border wall Congress didn't authorize. When he withheld aid to Ukraine without telling Congress. When he moved money between accounts for purposes Congress never approved. Each instance of spending without authorization. Article 3 about international aggression points directly at Venezuela, launching military operation without congressional approval, capturing foreign leader, claiming authority to govern another nation, using military force to achieve objectives Congress never authorized. Clear violation of war powers that Constitution assigns to legislative branch. Share this video because Article 4 about First Amendment violations includes threats against journalists, revoking press credentials, using government agencies to investigate media companies, demanding prosecutions of reporters, creating climate where press operates under threat of retaliation for coverage Trump doesn't like. Article 5 about unlawful office addresses DOJ specifically, whether it has legal authority, whether it can exercise power over federal agencies, whether its creation bypassed required congressional approval. Questions about whether it's constitutional entity or illegal power grab. Article 6 about corruption connects to documented conflicts, foreign governments spending money at Trump properties, business deals that benefit from presidential decisions, family members profiting from White House positions, pattern of mixing personal financial interests with official duties. And Article 7 brings it all together, says these aren't isolated mistakes. This is pattern of tyrannical behavior, accumulating power illegally, refusing to accept constitutional limits, acting like dictator rather than president bound by law. That's most serious charge possible against president, saying he's fundamentally incompatible with democratic government. Resolution's conclusion that Trump is unfit and will remain threat if left in office is explicit call for removal, not saying he made bad decisions, saying he cannot be trusted with power, that he will continue abusing it. That removal is only way to protect Constitution. That's as clear as impeachment language gets. And the fact that 140 House members already voted to advance impeachment shows this isn't fringe position. More than a third of House agrees Trump should face removal proceedings. They voted for it despite knowing it would fail, despite political cost, because they believe it's constitutionally necessary. Under Democratic majority, that support would grow dramatically. Members who currently vote with Republican leadership would be free to vote conscience. New members elected on platform of accountability would join. You'd easily get majority needed to impeach in House. Question is whether 17 Republican senators would join for conviction. Bottom line is this: Capitol Hill is erupting because lawmakers across spectrum demanding Trump resign. Multiple formal impeachment resolutions filed with detailed constitutional charges. H.R. 3533 containing 7 articles accusing Trump of obstruction, usurping spending power, international aggression, civil rights violations, creating unlawful office, corruption, and tyranny. Resolution explicitly calling him unfit to govern and threat to Constitution. December vote showed 140 members willing to advance impeachment over Republican opposition. That's more than a third of House demonstrating genuine commitment to removal. Baseline support that would grow under Democratic control. Trump himself acknowledged at GOP retreat that losing midterms means impeachment. Admitted Democrats have grounds ready, that only Republican control protects him. Trump's response is complete defiance, refusing to consider resignation, not modifying behavior, betting entirely on electoral protection, making no effort to address charges on merits, just fighting to maintain partisan shield that blocks accountability. 3 constitutional removal mechanisms exist, but none working. Impeachment blocked by Republican protection. Resignation won't happen because Trump ignores pressure. 25th Amendment requires VP and cabinet action that won't come. So mechanisms exist on paper but don't function in practice. Creates loaded gun situation where removal machinery exists but waits for political power to activate it. 2026 elections determine whether that power materializes. Democratic House victory means impeachment proceedings begin immediately using existing articles. Republican hold means Trump stays protected and abuses continue. This represents fundamental breakdown of constitutional accountability, where president can commit acts warranting removal but survive through partisan loyalty, where impeachment becomes partisan calculation, not constitutional principle, where elections matter more than rule of law. Dangerous precedent that weakens democracy and enables future abuse. Capitol Hill erupting with demands Trump can ignore because Congress won't force him out. That's the crisis. This continues. Stay tuned.